everyone, and welcome. This is a new episode of Mind Expansion Guest. As you know, this is the opportunity for every sensor in the community to reach out with a theme, a topic they feel particularly passionate about, they have a lot of experience on, and they want to share with the rest of the community. And it's my honor and pleasure to have today Helena, which is, I think, a long time sensor, but I might be wrong. Helena, how long have you been part of the community?
Oh, over a year, I think a couple of years. So yeah,
wow,
not so long, but
no, but actually we had people like recently come into the Mind Expansion Guest with like maybe just 3 months. So we are really open for that.
That's great.
We believe that this is part of what makes the community so interesting. Like we have like new people coming and people that have been there for a while. So we really have this idea of encompassing all different experience and walk of life. So thank you so much for being with us today. Would you like to tell us something about you?
So shall I tell you my story a little bit? So my background is in HR. So I had I guess an interesting life, not sure where I wanted to end up. I traveled a lot. I'm sure lots of sensors can relate to not quite finding your path. And then I ended up as an HR director in government and in aviation, looking at employee experience and workplace culture. From that, I moved into executive coaching and I started working for myself as an executive coach. So what that means is supporting senior leaders in organizations with leadership behaviors or goals or teamwork or that sort of thing. And my niche was always different thinkers, people who are challenging the status quo, people who are asking, why do we do it like this? Who wanted to do things differently. And I was doing that for a few years, self-employed, running my own business. And then when I was 40, I got a diagnosis of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And suddenly I went, oh, this makes sense. That's why I love working with these people. And of course, any sort of neurodiversity is a spectrum. So there's lots of people who wouldn't qualify for a diagnosis, but are sparky brained like me and a little bit different. The outliers, the misfits, the rebels, those are the people that I coach. So that's where I'm at. And I thought what might be nice today is to share some of the common themes that come up when I'm coaching people who are super bright and doing things differently and wanting to challenge. And also maybe my bigger purpose, which is around how do we change workplaces to get the best out of these people who are exceptional, but often, I think if they're like me, felt a little bit like a square peg in a round hole or couldn't quite fit in or struggled with the culture or acceptance.
I think this is really important, and I particularly like the way it aligns with our mission. So it really feels like you find a community that, in a sense, encapsulates some of these values that you were sharing, and the possibility for everyone to really participate in like conversation and sharing knowledge in many different ways. This is something that is very dear to us, but I think that your personal experience along with your professional experience is something that it's quite unique, if you will, but I also think that it could be a very important and strong message for people out there, maybe people that really don't know whether they might be diagnosed in the future, because I understand this is something that can happen at any age. And so maybe that will help them understand a little bit better. But it's also a nice message saying that it doesn't have to be done just in one specific way. You can get to whatever is important to you, and you can learn how to use all your skills and your perception in a way that really serves you. So I think this is really important, because I think gone are the days in which things had to be done in a specific and proper way, and there was no room for variations of any kind. So I think this is really like amplifying possibilities for people out there. That said, I think that the topic you chose for your little presentation today, which, if I remember correctly, but we can change it, of course, is the power of cognitive difference and neurodiversity. It's something very fascinating. As you know, in the Sense Network, we are big about cognitive differences and perspective, but I really like to hear it from you, because I have the feeling that the way you translate this is slightly different, but still part of the conversation we're having. So I leave you the stage.
Yeah, exactly. And I've listened to several of your talks and articles about the power of cognitive diversity. I mean, that's what senses are all about, right? So I feel like I'm preaching to the choir in some respects, but I think what I bring to it is a slightly different, like the neurodiversity angle. We often talk about different perspectives and different types of people, but actually when you have got really different brains, whether that's because you think you might be diagnosable with a neurodiverse condition, or just you think, yeah, I don't think like other people, I'm pretty different, then I think we need to work differently. And I was interested in what you were saying about, gone are the days when we have to do things in a certain way. And I wish that was true, but I think actually you guys are forging the path, and that's fantastic. But a lot of us still sometimes get stuck, and particularly in the corporate world, I see that quite a lot of, people who have incredible strengths around, creativity, intuition, being incredible empaths, and kind of getting this amazing social skills, or this attention to excellence and beauty and real perfectionist, real talents and skills. Or some of us have incredible systems thinking and pattern recognition. So one of the things I can do is go into organizations and see how cultures join up and how the system works in different parts of an enormous organization, and then intervene to shift that. And I think that's a really unusual quality. So we've all got these different strengths. And if we look at people like Einstein, Edison, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Ingvar Kamprad, who set up IKEA, Charles Schwab, the financier, an astronaut, who all say that their success is due to their neurodiversity and the fact that they just can't see the world in the way that other people see it. And they did things really differently, and had the freedom to do that and to really embrace their strengths and run with it and go, look, I'm just doing it this way. Going to get people to build their own furniture. I mean, that's a pretty wild idea at the time, but everyone does it now. It seems normal. And I guess the thing that I often see with my clients, and my clients, by the way, are plastic surgeons, CEOs, startup founders, entrepreneurs, some very wealthy people, very successful people, and others on the way up. But I still see these kind of common patterns of feeling like we ought to be doing it in another way, of I just need a plan, or I need to set some goals and then be consistent about how I get there, or I just need to be a little more organized, or I have to be like this. Or I hear quite often the sort of negative self-talk around, if I just put more pressure on myself and make more threats, I'm rubbish, I'm an idiot, if only I've just got to do this, and you're an idiot for not doing that, or consequences around not succeeding. And that's when people get really stuck, when we get either pressure, overwhelm of ideas, or this negative pattern of feeling like we're not fitting in, or we should be doing it a certain way. And I think that's compounded if you're working in a neurotypical environment, or a less sensor environment with fewer outliers, misfits and rebels. Then I think that pressure can be quite intense around, why don't you do it like this? Why don't you have a plan? Why aren't you time blocking? And actually, when we embrace doing things our way, that's when people are 4 times better than others. And they just really soar, whether that's recognizing, that the way I choose to work is I sprint and then I rest, and I will hyperfocus and I won't sleep, and I will achieve incredible things, but then I need to stop. So the pressure of, where you have to operate like the rest of the world and jog along continuously, that causes burnout. We do things our way.
I think this is very fascinating, because the way you're explaining this, at least to me as an external audience, is that first comes an awareness of this difference that you have in approaching things and learning things and going through the task. And that sometimes, as you were sharing before, that can also happen later in life. It doesn't necessarily is a knowledge that you have from the very beginning. As I say, maybe in the beginning you just feel like you're different, but maybe it's like there's a problem, you need to like fit in. And after this awareness come, I'm wondering, how do you communicate this to other people once you're aware that this is just a different approach that can still be, you know, very successful if you feed into it, if you understand how to behave and what kind of routine you need to perform better. How do you communicate that externally so that also people can accommodate that difference and really help you thrive?
Yeah, and I think you've nailed it when you said, you know, maybe you felt different all of your life, but you didn't quite understand what the patterns were or how actually it's part of the pattern that other people share. And so there's maybe a label for it. And I think often people have felt different their whole life, and it's become this sort of internalized, well, I can't do it, or I'm not as good as other people because they haven't. It's like you flick the switch and you go, oh, yeah, this is why I can't do that. And if I'm over here, then I can do it. So your question was around how to share that with people. And I think regardless of whether we label it neurodiversity or whether we just go, I can't do it like that, I'm doing it my way and I'm a free thinker. Part of that is having an internal strength. So I guess one of the things that we often coach on is around being really clear on your strengths and really aware of what they are, because if we're not sure, and we tend as well, some of us, to kind of move on from our successes very quickly, we'll diminish them like, oh, yeah, well, you know, I got that degree, but the university can't have been that good because they let me graduate. And yeah, I did that keynote, but I messed up the end bit. And then we'll forget about it. And we're on to beating ourselves up with why we haven't done what Bob in accounts did. So there's part of connecting with your strengths and then having self-compassion for the fact that we are a little bit different, and that's wonderful. And building that armor of, I'm not bothered about the way you do it, that's okay. And I think then you can be quite clear. You don't need to self-disclose, oh, I've got a neurodiverse condition, or I've got a disability or disorder, or any of those kind of words that I don't like to use. You can just say, this is how I like to work, or actually that doesn't work for me. This is, you know, so when I talk to leaders, we'll talk about set a vision and then allow your people to get there in the way they want to. And that can be uncomfortable sometimes because we all think, well, this is the right way to do it. I want them to do it like this. So stepping away from that, being clear about your vision, your intentions, your outputs, and then getting there in your own way and just being very clear about that. And then maybe other little things like, actually, you know, I like to wear noise cancelling headphones. I need to be around other people to get my best work done. I'm someone for whom silence is a killer. I need people, I need music, I need noise, and then I can focus. I need movement. Or maybe you need to be alone and you need to have something else. But understanding your needs and stating them really clearly, I think
makes all the difference.
Yeah,
I think this is so important. And actually, I was listening to you. I was thinking about when I realized for the first time that I was an introvert. It was like in my 40s, because before that, I just okay, there's something that doesn't really work for me, like socially. After I'm with people for a few hours, I just need to distance myself. Is there something wrong with me? So I could totally relate to that. And the awareness, when it came, I was like, oh, it's just another way of existing in the world. I'm not doing anything wrong. It's just that I need to know how I get my energy and how I see my energy just slowly like deplete, because this way I can always make sure that in my best possible conditions to interact with people, and I actually do like interacting with people, but it's like my social batteries run low very fast, and then when that happens, I need to be by myself. And the moment I realized that, I stopped apologizing for that. So I think that really was the switch for me. Like, oh, it's not something I should be ashamed of or feel sorry about. It's more like, this is me. But now that I know it, I will make sure that whenever we engage, I always offer you, you know, the best joy I can be, because I know my limits. I think it's about knowing your own like limits or triggers or needs, and really preserving your energy for what is important. So I can definitely and the fact that I didn't even know that this you know different way of approaching the world existed until very late was actually the problem, because I didn't even know who I am. So I didn't have a way to identify. In this sense, the internet was very powerful because it helped me. It opened up doors like, oh, this is what I am. I found that definition. I'm wondering if this is something that happens to you, or maybe some of your clients in the same way. Like suddenly you read something like, oh, but that's me.
Yeah, exactly. I think so many of us are diagnosed by memes these days, and we'll find our tribe through memes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's a really powerful thing that's changed recently. And actually, people seeking assessment for neurodiversity in the UK and women, it's gone up 1,000% in the last year. And I actually had to check the figures because I was like, I'm sure they've got that wrong. But it's gone from, hundreds to tens of thousands. People finding their tribe and realizing that actually this is how I do things, and now I can reach my potential and I can thrive and excel. And part of coaching is also what you described around knowing yourself, and many of us got to our 40s before we understood this is who I am, this is what I need, this is where I thrive, this is where I need to delegate or ask for help. And there's a lovely phrase that I don't know who discovered water, but it wasn't a fish. Like, the fish can't see water, nor can a polar bear feel the cold. And so that's a part of what I do in coaching, is reflecting back what you can't see. And I can't do it for myself. That's why, I had a coach in 2008, I think, and that's when my life started really changing, because they were able to mirror, to reflect, to challenge me, to question some of my beliefs about this is how the world is, and allow me to open my eyes and go, oh, it doesn't have to be. This is just a perception I have. And that changed a lot. Yeah.
How important do you believe is educating people on this? Because sometimes it's, you have the opportunity to tell people this is like within the range of human experience, this exists, so it might be you. But in other cases, it's more like letting people know that they might have somebody, a friend, a relative, a colleague that, is similar to, of course, it's a spectrum, so I understand there's so many variables. But how important it is to make sure that this is a conversation we keep having, instead of just relying on memes or, the fun parts of that. How can we make sure that the right information reach people that at one point will have to, maybe work together? So this is something that could help a lot, understanding differences.
Yeah.
Is there any way to do it?
I think. I guess I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, but I'll pick it up, and I see two sides to that. So one is the side of, actually, I may be neurodiverse and I don't know it yet, and how important that is, because I think it's life-changing once you understand how your brain works. And one example that I see really often is rumination, and people who've got very sparky, brilliant, fast-paced brains who get stuck in loops of like the stuck record of beating themselves up, and they can't turn it off. And often that leads to depression if it's ruminating about things that have happened, or anxiety if we're ruminating about things in the future. And once you understand that actually you've got a brain that really needs stimulation, that's hyperactive, that is interest-based, and it's sensation-seeking. And if you don't feed it, it will feed itself, and it will go to the easiest thing, which is threat scanning and risk scanning. And then we've got a very wide span of awareness, so we'll pick up whatever risk or threat we can see and then chew it over, because that's interesting to our brains and they need interest. It's not necessarily what we need as people, but it's where brains will go if they're, sparky, fast brains will go and do that. So once you understand these sort of things about how to work with your brain, that's life-changing, because you can go, oh, thanks, brain. I can see that you're looking for something to stimulate you, and I know you've done some threat scanning, but actually, this isn't what we need right now. Let's get you focused on, keep you busy with something else that's positive and aligned with my purpose. So in terms of educating individuals, I think it makes such a difference. And you'll know, because if you've been online anytime recently, you'll see people getting diagnosed and going, oh my God, my life's changed, even without medication. And the second part of that question that I want to pick up is how important is it to talk about generally, because I think that brings me to my second piece of work, and I wish that I was kind of further on with this, but perhaps some of the senses can help me, because I feel like this is super important to my purpose in life. It's like, how do we change organizations? So there's a phrase I like around, if all the fish in your pond are dying, you don't take the fish out and give them a wipe and send them on a course and put them back in, you change the pond water. So my big challenge is, how do you change the pond water? So how do we make this a broader conversation so that people can really thrive and fit in and in wider organizations, and some are way ahead of the game. So I mean, you guys are forging ahead, and I'm sure some of the brands you work with will also be really ahead in terms of innovation and diversity and really wanting to challenge and do things differently, and they'll be leading commercially as well because of that. If you look at Microsoft, when they implemented their neurodiversity hiring program in 2014, their share prices rocketed.
Whoa.
That's when their new CEO Satya Nadella came in, and he said, right, we're going to do things differently. It's a culture of psychological safety, embracing difference. So there's lots of examples, but I think pushing the conversation is still a challenge, because doing things differently is hard, and it's tiring, and it takes time, and we have to get out of our comfort zone. And it's not all people suddenly thriving and winning billions of dollar contracts. It's like, also sometimes people are awkward, or there's a disagreement, or we're not quite seeing eye to eye, and we don't quite get where that person's coming from, and that all goes with it. So for me, yeah, that's the other part of the challenge. How do we make this conversation much wider and start to help people really see the benefits, and also how to do it? Because it's daunting, I think, if it's not familiar to you and you're not one of the misfits or outliers or rebels. Like, how do I do that? Why would I want them? This feels scary and hard.
I think this is really something that we are focused on, because, as you know, we usually work with teams, and sometimes these teams are also made up from bite sensor, and we try to create teams that really represent as much as like cognitive diversity as possible. And what you're saying is true, especially in the beginning, and there are like studies about it. Like, if the group is very like divergent, of course things are harder, because you need to adjust to different perspectives, different cultures, different languages. It can be any kind of differences, but in the long run, medium long run, what initially was like a problem becomes a huge opportunity, because you are forced to see things from different perspectives, and that is really beneficial, both from an individual and collective point of view. Because it's like, they say that, for instance, when very diverse team work towards making estimate, for instance, that diversity helped, because instead of having like a single like direction, they were actually asking all the right questions, even the uncomfortable one. And so they were able to really make estimates which were more precise, because there was more doubts going on. And so they weren't settling with the first answer, but really challenging each other in a positive way. So I think it's just like a shift that needs to occur, that maybe the kind of agreement we are all naturally looking for is the end of a process. It's not like the first step, because otherwise you're missing all the opportunity of growing through it. You're always the same, but we're not rocks. So we should transform and grow and understand. And so meeting people coming from different perspectives might be challenging. So it's also the only chance you have to really become a better version of yourself, because you encompass multitudes. And so I think this is definitely the way to go. And I'm so happy. Yeah.
I was going to say, so Simon Sinek talks about this in his book, The Infinite Mind, The Infinite Game. And also Carol Dweck, who coined the term, when we talk about growth mindset, that's exactly what you're describing, is we should be seeking out challenge and disagreement and looking for growth and purpose, rather than just competing against or looking to do the same thing, but a bit better. And all those things you just described around, it's a process and it takes a while, and there's challenges along the way.
But it's also very rewarding, I guess, the moment that you click and it's like, oh, okay, now I can really, widen and broaden my horizons. I was just wondering, is there, both on a personal level, but also professionally now, is there any, I don't know, books or website or anything that you think might be important for people that want to understand better what neurodiversity is and how to approach it, or maybe even see whether they are actually one of the many people that we discover later in life that they might be diagnosed with HD, or anything that can help people expand their knowledge a little bit?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think the neurodiversity field is so wide because it encompasses, probably heard of ADHD and autism and dyslexia, dyscalculia, also Tourette's, bipolar disorders. Apologies for all the people I've left out in the moment, but there's a huge expanse of what neurodiversity means. And of course, there's no such thing as a neurotypical brain. So all our brains develop differently. And the labels in neurodiversity are just ways of grouping certain types of thinking or behavior together and going, we think these sort of fit in this group, but there's a lot of there's a breadth within that and lots of crossover. It's a bit of a Venn diagram. It's not, our brains aren't really a list of symptoms that fit neatly into boxes. So I think if you're curious, I would just start exploring neurodiversity generally. There's a great book by Gail Saltz called The Power of Difference, which is about genius and disorder. So she looks at various geniuses through history and how their disorders contributed to their strengths and how they excelled in life. So that's really fascinating. Genius Within is a great company in the UK. I think globally, you'll find your local thing. I don't know if there's a big global neurodiversity forum, but I think, just get curious and explore. And particularly social media is really great for giving lived experience versus what you get in the textbooks, which I don't relate to at all. This kind of list of challenges and disorders and symptoms. But when I speak to other people with ADHD, I'm like, okay, yeah, we can talk about this is what it is. It feels different.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what about if we want to discover more about what you do? Because you say that coaching people that might, want to work on that and understand how to, manage to do whatever that it's important to them in a way that it's like, successful from many perspectives. What is the best way to enter your world?
To find me, so I do one-to-one coaching, and then I also do sort of keynote speeches and leadership development, and I also do a bit of coach training. Hatchedcoaching.com is my website. You can find me there. Yeah, that's probably the easiest way. Come
awesome.
Say hi. Or I'm on Instagram and Facebook. So
that's great. I will add all the relevant links to the article with the recording of this video. So if people want to explore and get to know you better, of course, they can do it. And also, Helena is very active in the community, so you can tag her in the comment section of this video if you have any other question, if you need some guidance or maybe some more exploration.
Or come and teach me things as well. I'd love to chat.
Yes. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you is, this is something we always ask our guests, even in the podcast that you might have heard our podcast, is do you have any either question or request for the community? Because we like the exchange. You brought up your knowledge and in your perspective. Is there something that you would like to ask the community, or just to throw there for like something else to explore? What would you like the Sense Network to do for you?
I think the thing for me would be, how are you changing the world to make it a better place for outliers, misfits, and rebels? And please share any tips or ideas or things you've done.
Wow.
How are we changing the pond water?
That's super powerful, and with your permission, I will use this question for our Monday musing session.
I would love that.
Every Monday we have a question. Some of them are a little bit silly, just to have a conversation, but others are much more powerful. This is definitely in this second group. So after the video, so the Monday immediately after this will be our Monday music question. I'm really interested to see what people answer to that, and it's going to be a nice collection of ideas, hopefully. So thank you for giving us this input. And then it was great talking to you. Of course, I'm very grateful for your perspective and everything that you do. Actually, it's very inspiring. I think we're trying to match your energy and your ideas and your creativity, but it's nice to know that the Sense Network is made up of incredible people like you. And so I am sure that this is an ongoing conversation. So from time to time, we should touch points on this and see the status of things. But it's nice to know that this kind of approach is now becoming a little bit more mainstream, because I think we all benefit from more inclusiveness of any kind. And so thank you so much for representing so well.
No, I'm so grateful to be here, and I've really had a lot of fun. So thank you. I feel like the Sense Network are 100% my tribe and my people. So
yes, we are claiming you.
Lovely to connect with you guys and say hi again. Yeah, thank you so much.
This is your home. Have a great day.
See you soon. Thank you.